good looking though. It's gonna get quite a bit bigger.
Our viewers.
That's, I mean, that's when you say that
Our
you're
viewers at home.
just starting to. Not yet, we've been talking to Brian about it. We'll work on it from there. Yeah.
Never again. Not on my end. You just keep working it out.
Yeah. Well, we want to make sure we do everything just right.
Dale may not be here because his wife's getting out of the hospital today.
Yeah, you gotta watch those lawyer types.
Did you get that article I sent you
I
yesterday?
did, that's great. I think I shared it with you, something we should think through too.
Yeah, I wanted to set up a meeting with you to follow up on all that stuff.
We're gonna do a major forum on.
Yeah, you just send me, I'll get the date from you. I didn't make it to the round table because I got quotes all day.
I didn't do it either.
Yeah, you want to.
The forum's a little more policy stuff. I'm just. Everybody should put a chair out there.
Or you need to do a mic and for the roll call. Sorry.
Here's the finances of Northern Enterprise, huh? It is today.
Where Richard is. I don't know where Richard is. He's the
He was
star.
just in a meeting with us, but do you need him right out to start off?
No.
You can get started then.
Okay.
I can be your second member here, so you got quorum.
Okay.
Okay. Do you need a gavel or anything?
Is it PMLD? Is it?
Yeah, it's just about oh yeah.
Yeah. He's just
Can we do the roll? Are you ready?
Yeah.
those are mine.
Cool.
Counselor Kelly?
Here?
Counselor Reed? Mayor Reed?
Present?
Counselor Crutcher?
Here.
Counselor McFarland?
Here.
Okay. Well, this is a part of our meeting where we ask the public to come and make comments about anything on today's agenda or anything having to do with city finance if they would like. Not seeing any members of the public here, I think we're okay to close that part of the meeting. Okay, so we have 3 agenda items in our reports section today. One is a report by the city chamberlain on the 2018 budget. We're also going to call on him to talk to us about the cost savings for 2017 and year-to-date 2018. And that is a question that some of the councilors have asked repeatedly, so we finally have some hard numbers for you to consider. So looking forward to that. And then we'll have the continued discussion of our 5-year budget plan. So since the chamberlain's not here yet, we'll go ahead and start with that one.
And I can, with regard to the 20 department consolidations, I ran some numbers with him as well, and I can report back on some of what he would talk about, but
Okay.
not all.
Okay, we may ask you to do that, maybe. Thank you. All right. As members of the council know, we've been working diligently in the last several weeks to come up with our 2019 version of our 5-year plan, and we've done a wonderful job so far. Just like to commend everyone for the attention they paid to finance, which I know is a very dry topic, but I really appreciate everyone's participation and comments throughout the process. Okay, that's just the introduction that we've seen numerous times now. And then our assumptions, one more time, we'll review those. They are cost and value, structural balance, unassigned fund balance growth, and then sustainability. We looked at our taxpayers roller coaster and how we've begun to smooth that out, and that's very admirable. Although those lines don't appear to tell a big story, they do tell a big story. The council's made some really hard decisions in the past several months to cut spending, and that is always very difficult. It's really easy to grow government. We all feel good about that. It's really difficult to shrink government. So, the rates of inflation. Okay, some of the things we've talked about in previous weeks is we decided that our property tax base increase will remain at 1% in our 5-year plan. We had talked about maybe increasing that percentage a little bit to account for future inflation, but we decided to err on the side of caution and conservatism and keep that at 1%. Bonding, 2.263, we have confirmed is a number until 2023. Healthcare, we decided to keep the $150 expectation for healthcare in the next 5-year plan. Now that's in addition to a 1.15% add-on for healthcare inflation. So we talked that over with Mr. Marks last week, and he's comfortable with those figures. Firefighter arbitration, we're going to keep these figures the same for our next 5-year plan, but we are prepared to look at the outcomes and modify if necessary. Revenue additions, we talked about increased ambulance revenue and the Imperial Dam project, and we had added a large sum of revenue for the Imperial Dam project, but the mayor told us last week that money may not be available, at least not as much as we thought.
And we had another conversation this morning with the DEC, and I think that merely affirms my concern.
Okay, we may have to adjust that figure. All right. So our accomplishments so far, to summarize, are we've agreed on our underlying assumptions for our budget. We agreed on a rate of inflation, including the 1.15% healthcare add-on, because we believe that healthcare, of course, grows faster than the normal rate of inflation. We agreed on a property tax base increase of 1%. No new bonding until 2023. The rate stays at 2.263. We agreed to continue to monitor healthcare expenses. So in future finance meetings, Mr. Marks, I may ask you if you would be so kind as to give us updates on our healthcare expenses year to date, because that's something we need to watch closely. Not today, of course.
I got it.
Don't get me wrong.
No, I've got it.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Can you project it?
We can, yeah.
Okay.
We'll let us finish this and we'll go right into your report, okay? Monitor revenue opportunities such as the ambulance revenue and Imperial Dam project. And now we have going online, we hope, a new marina. So there will be another opportunity for revenue. Happy about that. So great job, council. Thank you so much again for focusing on finance for the last several weeks.
Before you get off of that though,
Okay.
the mayor has to take a look at this.
And with regard to your conclusion there, really the work you've done really is exceptional. As you know, we've gone from no 5-year planning to this, and you know, I'm on a number of boards. I'm a kind of a finance nerd, and I see very few organizations that do this as methodologically as you do, sitting down, all agreeing on the assumptions, and then doing the hard analysis. Heck, Councilor Ensel and I have seen this cycle many times at the university, an organization of similar revenues and scale as ours, and we're now doing this at a more sophisticated level broadly than I think they are even. So this is really, really impressive work.
The audio is gone. Sorry.
This song?
Yeah, it won't. There's a problem with
So we can't use it?
No.
Okay.
So thank you all. This is wonderful.
Can't do a projection on
Not from the projector. You'd have to put it on a zippy drive.
What is this we're looking at, Richard?
that. The mayor asked me to put together a 10-year analysis, but it was easy enough to go back to 2000 because that's how far back news goes. Of all the severance payouts for sick leave and vacation.
And 2018 is a partial total so far,
So
correct?
far,
Yeah. So you see the number in 2018 is a little bit lower, but we expect it to be quite a bit higher.
Yeah, so it's gonna be quite a bit higher than 2016 and 15, most likely.
Well, we don't know yet. 17 was a big number,
Sure was.
537,000.
No, yeah, I mean
One of the
16 and
biggest numbers
15.
yet, except for, go back to 2002.
I think in 2018,
6.3 million over 18 years, 17 and a half years. Pretty big number.
I think
What do we have
2018
budgeted for this year?
I
300?
gave you that, we had a meeting, what, a couple months ago?
Yeah,
or a
I think
month
it's
ago.
300.
I can't remember, I'd have to look it up.
Pretty sure it's 300. Figure seems to resonate with me, but I'm not absolutely certain.
If that leaks quick, then that's probably right, but I'd have to look it up. We can check it if we're gonna.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious, but I think that's what I seem to recall, but again,
These are
Yeah, I
sick
think the
leave.
last time we looked at it, we were at 121,000. So
Right.
we've had a few more go in, we had 2 firemen go out, two officers. And so that's where we are now. And I think you're right, it's about 323, 325.
mhm.
So this averages around 300,000 per year. I estimate we're going to be about twice that this year, and we may have the record year, although I see 2002 was very large. Rich, do you have any idea why 2002 was a record year?
Wasn't here at the time, but I can look the people up, give you the details. I just summarized it so I didn't have names on the sheet, but the names are in there at the next level down of detail. But once Mr. Brody goes, he's gonna blow this chart way away. It's gonna
So I
be
guess
all
you just
done.
have to
We won't be able to
stay.
afford to send it.
Make a little,
We,
a little understanding there.
Can you hold off to 2025, Mike?
Only 1/3 of my severance pay comes out of general fund.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I'm not,
that's a relief. But we still want you to stick around, okay?
I'm thinking this number's gonna double when he goes.
Richard, could you explain to me though, under the hours in 2014, 17 hours at
I'd have to look at why the hours.
178,000 for 17 hours?
I have to look at why the hours are being included. I did this very quickly.
Sure that wasn't
The
months?
last 2 minutes of coming up here, while I was waiting for her to cash out so I could lock up the cash. So,
The other thing is.
get your questions together and then send them to me and I'll get you the answers. Okay?
The other thing we should be taking consideration, Mike talked about the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Our department, I know that we're very diligent during our budgeting to budget for separation. And we always err on the conservative side, and I think Richard could attest to that, correct, Mark?
You do use a lot of cushion, yes.
Yes, but so when people leave us suddenly, like other departments in the city, we're not, our numbers are covered.
Yeah.
You're conservative budgeters. All right. The message was received. So anyway, I don't know if you need to copy that for the record for the meeting.
That's very helpful.
So I think it's something that we've got to put in the numbers.
We do,
Uh,
we do. And in a slide or two, I'll show you what, that you and I are thinking the same way, so that's nice.
Yeah, you wanted to see it versus budgeted, so I'll have to go pull the budget numbers on that. That's a little more difficult than pulling in the actuals. There's some things that are really convenient about Munis and others that aren't.
Okay, we're gonna come back to you, Richard, just as soon as I finish my slideshow.
Take all the time you want, because my stuff is just regurgitating actuals and it's boring, but
It's all
I gotta
good.
talk about the planning stuff too.
It's all good. Okay, so the items that we have yet to complete in our 5-year plan are in the following slides. The first, by coincidence, is payouts for sick leave and accrued vacation. As the mayor mentioned, those payouts have been in the $300,000 range on the average annually, sometimes much higher, sometimes much lower. We are expected to increase this year, next. And the question is for the council, should we add additional funds in anticipation of increased buyouts? And I think from our discussion this afternoon, the answer to that question is probably going to be yes, we should add additional funds. Okay, next item is legal costs. Are we currently spending more than budgeted is a fair question to ask. Do we anticipate increased spending in 2019 forward? So we need a realistic picture of legal spending in order for the council to feel comfortable with that area of cost.
I would find that somewhat difficult for, how do you anticipate down the road in 3, 4, or 5 years any litigation that you may be going, except for, I mean, some are definitely obvious, but I mean, do we just add a percentage increase each year, or?
Well,
I guess
this year we added a couple of categories. We knew we would have 2 likely litigations with the firefighters
Right.
union, and both of those are proceeding. We're hopeful that they're going to wrap up this year. And the other category is the tax certiorari cases. We've got a big one that's going to, I think we've alluded to in the past, going to continue on for a number of years. I think we've added enough reserve because we've also renegotiated with our internal counsel to do a little bit more in-house and have him put a little bit more hours in, and which he graciously volunteered to do with given the same sum. So on average, I think if we just stick to what we've done for another couple of years, and then hope that one of those litigation packages, at least the firefighters, kind of falls off. I've asked them if they'd be willing to come and sit down and renegotiate and stuff. I'm always hopeful. So I think it's going to be plus or minus each year for the next couple of years, but I think we've got a sufficient reserve.
what about what collective bargaining do we have coming up? And that would certainly affect legal costs.
Shouldn't require litigation.
No, but it would also, but it
not
would,
significant legal costs. So we're on a retainer with our labor council to do that. So I wouldn't expect, unless something unusual occurs, that there'd be significant costs in addition there. So I think based on your projections already in your 5-year plan, I'm comfortable with those, and I would hope in 3 or 4 years that starts whittling down as some of these big picture litigations are finished with.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns on that?
Richard, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think it's, some of it isn't predictable, the odd things that come up like Falcon Seaboard, but some of it is pretty predictable. We can count on so many Article 7 challenges every year. We can count on negotiations in different years. So we have history on those, so we can pretty much plan for those.
what about, would there be, over the course of the 5 years, even with our current retainer with our labor attorney, as well as with our city legal counsel, would there be a projected increase in their retainer or in
Their
their
fees are
salary?
gonna go up, yep, and we know what those do too.
Okay.
Yeah, see with our.
But then wouldn't we have to build that in over the course?
We have to, yeah. The labor matters from the attorney, he bills us a retainer, and as well, we have what he calls his Part B matters, where he's actually negotiating or doing litigation for the city. And we budget for both of those items each year, as well as the corporation council. And then we also add some additional for the odd items that come up, the additional Article 7s and those kind of things.
Okay.
Because there's outside counsel for those. And we're actually putting those costs through assessment, and we put legal costs through fire for a lot of the arbitrations and grievances that are consistently coming out of fire.
And they've already been factored in the 5-year, those increases?
Yes.
They have. The one thing we didn't really expect last time we went through this cycle last summer was the Falcon Seaboard.
Right.
And on the other hand, our internal counsel also offered to do more legal assistance for the same amount. So I think those might wash out and average out. We're going to receive less extra billing from our internal counsel this year to an amount that's probably approaching how much Falcon Seaboard will cost us.
Good questions, everyone. Thank you. And then bans and bonds, we know we have no new bonding before 2023, but we will do bans between now and then. So, any thoughts on that, Richard?
1.5% to 2%, I think.
1.5
comfortable
Okay.
for the interest rate.
Okay.
Normally, when somebody is bidding for short-term paper like that, they'll use a 1.5% to 2% if it's a market rate, and they'll buy it down with a premium because they're, you know, aggressive on the bidding and they want to win.
Yeah.
So it could be as low as 1 to 1.5, but I think if we go 1.5 to 2 is conservative.
Okay, okay.
And then, you know, we have to base that interest cost on the anticipated capital spending
Right. Increases in capital spending.
each year, right?
Is
And then, of
everybody,
course, we have to budget that in each fund wherever the project is related to.
right, might not all be the general fund.
And some of it, with bans, you also have to pay a principal amount each year. You don't get a free ride on the term.
Okay,
Let's say it's a 10-year asset and you ban it for 3 years.
okay,
You're starting at year 4, you only have 7 years left for the life of that, so you're paying a principal on those bans as you go, so we'll have to factor that in as well.
I'm just gonna pull up our 10-year plan here and see what I can do to make that larger. Let's go 200% here, see how that looks. Okay, the road where the band payments and some other things have been placed is right here. And we have set aside for this year $500,000 in our plan for capital project bans and retirement buyouts. Next year, 628, 422 for 2020, 676, 889. So we need to look at those numbers and see if they are accurate. If we're comfortable with that, do we need to increase? So that's a question that the council needs to answer before we approve our 5-year plan.
Given that buyouts could easily be $600,000 this year alone, even without the ban,
Yeah,
one revised that a little bit.
That number should go up from 500 to a much larger number. And then next year, any thoughts? It's impossible to know, I know, but we do try to plan for that.
Well, for 18, we won't have any ban costs because we won't be borrowing any money this year.
That's, okay,
It would be after we spend, it'd be 19 that's affected. by
it'll be
anything
not,
we spend
okay,
this year,
okay.
because we financed last year.
So this number for sick leave buyouts may be,
Purely
That's about
sick
right,
leave,
yeah.
just sick leave.
Yeah.
It could be even a little short.
Mhm.
could be,
But 19, would that also be representative of no bans, the 628?
No,
We'll
I
need to
think that
ban
has
next
band information as well as the buyouts. Yeah, that's why it's a bigger number.
So we could come up with a reasonable, steady state buyouts rate, $600,000 the next few years, and then Rich can do a estimate of the bans based on the capital projects you expect to do for next few years, and give you at least some guidance for next couple of years for that.
Which line's the debt service on? Because I know I did a projection on the debt service changes over time.
That was line 8, wasn't it?
that would be
Or
line 8.
9, one of those two.
Mhm.
Yeah, and see, that goes down
Right.
because we retired different bond issues.
Yeah.
So that's got some negatives in it, and then there's a pop back up in 2023, anticipating going out to the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's some logic to this stuff. It's good.
Why?
On the buyouts there, I'm confused because, like I said, I know that we budget and include the cost of sick and vacation buyout in our operating, so basically you're doubling down in there.
Yeah,
Now, I don't know what the other departments do,
So maybe that should just be the increase in buyouts compared to what you already had factored in.
Correct.
Yeah, because
Yep.
we never go over ours.
And how many anticipated retirements do you have?
How many do we
Mike's a
have?
big fish here.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm talking about 2018, how many people are going to retire in 2018?
I know we've had quite a few.
I don't know, but you gotta base your numbers on that.
But we've had quite a few already, yes.
Yeah, well,
What,
How many are left, though? There's not
Some-
many left.
Some of that was budgeted, some of that was not budgeted.
Okay.
So,
That's a good point. It should be only the unbudgeted, unexpected ones in there.
Correct.
If all the departments were already putting in some estimated budgets, so it'd be double counted to do it both times.
yeah, that's a
I
good
think it's your
point.
point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
so these numbers could possibly drop.
Probably a little bit lower this year and then higher next year, because we will have to go out and band next year. So let's get the estimate for the band cost for based on the capital projects next few years. I know you guys are working together on making those capital costs, capital investments a little bit more accurate, and you're changing the way, the major one is obviously roads, so you're changing those, that plan a little bit for their next set of recommendations, so.
Okay, so that was the last item to consider, and I plugged in all the numbers that we've arrived at so far. You can see some of them, 3.15 for inflation, 1% for our property tax base increase. And here is what we're looking at for tax increases over the next several years. You can see we're really flat there, fairly optimistic, but we do manage to add to the fund balance, at least for a few of the years ahead. So, do we want to do better? Yes, I think we do. The question is, and will remain, is where can we make cuts? That's where the big savings are, and where we can add to the fund balance. I'll show you an example here. I've been a big advocate of cutting $1 million in 2019. I will show you what that does to the financial outlook. Whoops, I think I
Forgot a zero.
didn't add enough zeros, did I? Add another one. Okay, so you can see that after 2019, if we could manage to cut $1 million in permanent expenses, we would be in very good shape.
But that's, we wouldn't have to do that much, because that assumes $1 million this year and then $50,000 less the next year.
Yeah.
You did $1 million this year, you wouldn't have to do 950 the next year, 900,000.
No.
So so the improvement's not gonna be as big. If you put in like a more reasonable number, like 250,000 next year,
Yeah.
so try that.
Okay. So you can see we still have a healthy fund balance going forward.
What is
Maybe
your
not as
current-
good as we hope for, but
Your current guidelines is 5 to 10%, isn't
Yeah.
that correct?
yes.
yes, but you've always advocated more
Yeah.
because we're self-funded for insurance, so
Right.
it's nice to have that cushion. But
And for 2018, the 300,000, since we're already using actual budget numbers for 2018, aren't we? So we wouldn't have any $300,000 savings in the 2018 column, right? Maybe we should put those to, that permanent to zero, and the temporary, we are still doing a good work on temporary savings this year, unanticipated in the budget.
Okay. With that small change, you can see we get back into the red here, 2023.
The available at the end of 17 is what, 263 there? That bottom?
Mm-hmm.
You did a little bit better than that in the final analysis too, with you just closed the books out,
No,
didn't
the
you?
available is gonna be 236.
236?
Because the reserves for asset seizure and for prepaid expenses went up.
Do you want to put 236 in there?
Well, I'll give you the final number. It's not finished yet completely, but yeah, you can use 236, I guess.
Give us a 1% fund balance.
Our loss actually came out at 421. We were saying about 417, 400 to 417, it came at 421, but that's 115,000 that's carrying over to next year as open purchase orders that haven't been liquidated yet. So the actual loss is just about 300,000. So it's not bad. It's better than the last year at 393, but still it's a loss.
Okay.
So if you did that, you could squeeze into your 5 to 10% fund balance policy in 2020, by 2020, then immediately by 2021, you're right back out of your range, right?
Yes.
So just as a
Yeah.
point of clarification.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Yes, Mike?
Yeah, so on the permanent savings, so we're $1 million, 250, 200. If you add those up over the course of the spreadsheet, basically, you're cutting 1.6, 1.7 million over that period of time.
Yes.
That's a whole department.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So we're aware that basically,
You know,
something's gonna have to give here. There's no.
we're gonna ask Mr. Marks to get up and talk to us about our cost savings from last year's department consolidation in just a minute here. So you will be able to see for yourself, you know, how you can arrive at numbers that large. It's not a pleasant thing to do. Nobody wants to do it. I hope we don't have to do it. I hope we find some way to, you know, get an infusion of cash from somewhere. But I don't want to do it at the expense of the taxpayers. You know, we want to make them comfortable. We want to make them, you know, under the state mandated tax cap if we can. That's the goal. So.
And the good news, if you look about 10 lines up and all that red up there, remember that was predicated on not doing all the difficult work everybody's done and just instead just increasing taxes till we got to the max. And then we're still in the red almost forever, right? So
yes,
that's the good news.
And you can see these huge tax increases of 11.3%. I don't know how much longer the public would allow us to do that. That's the average for past several years. But, you know, there's definitely a clear message out there. Stay under the tax cap if you can. So that's what we're going to try to do. So it's a real juggling act, and I don't have the answers. I hope somebody can help find those answers. But we do have some more tough decisions to make over the next few years, I'm afraid. Okay, Richard wanted to talk to us about our 2017 department consolidations, and
Do you have those?
they're ready to throw up on the screen here,
All right.
Richard. You
Good.
just you tell me which one you want, and
That's the one.
that's the one. Okay,
I believe so.
okay.
Can you
blow it up
enlarge
a little
that?
bit?
Can I blow it up a little bit?
I think you hit the plus sign up above. Right? Nope.
Nope, to your
Back in the
left,
middle.
left, there, right there.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, got it. Oh, okay, very
There
nice.
you go. So what I put together here was the departments, and you could roll down and see them. There's finance, assessment, human resources, engineer, and then on the next page,
Next page, okay.
next page is community development, system IT, rec administration. And then the next page is all the parks. And then the next page is parks and beautification, and then the last one should be rec complex administration. Now, those are all the departments that were affected by the cost cutting last year, where they were either zeroed because they were eliminated, or else their budgets changed because costs were shifted. So if we go back up to the top, I guess the easiest way is to grab that bar in the middle of that and just slide it straight up. There you go. So in finance, we took on the HR requirements, but no change in the budget. We didn't add any costs or add any people. We're just absorbing the function. So there's no change there. In assessment, obviously, you see last year at this time, they were up to about $49,000. This year, it's only $5,800, $5,900. It's budgeted for 132 because of our county support of about 110,000 for the whole assessment department for the year, as well as about 14,000, 15,000 in outside service costs for Article 7 and legal costs for chasing those grievances for property taxes. HR, you see last year at this time was at 31, and what I'm showing here is to date. Now, unfortunately, the first column, which is last year's total numbers for the month of May, don't really compare to the 2018 actual in the fourth column, because it's only through May Tuesday when I just did it. So if I keep updating this at the end of every month, we'll continue to see how much cost we've saved month over month over month compared to last year. And once we get through the whole year, we'll see what the total is. The mayor did some quick numbers, and it's anticipated that $500,000 in personnel and related costs are going to be the savings when you just look at the personnel versus the healthcare
For 18.
for 18, yes. And then long-term, $1 million worth of long-term healthcare savings because we don't have healthcare for those people out to retirement or through retirement. So anyway, HR is 0, engineer is 0, and if you roll down with that bar to the next page, we do have $27,850 in engineering has to be transferred out. That's the rest of the ADA purchase order of $50,000 and hasn't been finalized for the improvements around the city. So it shouldn't be charged there. We'll move that encumbrance out. Community development, you'll see that their numbers for regular pay have gone up, like 44,000 versus 72, but that's because their personnel have increased to absorb some of the engineering support staff.
Richard, do we have copies, or did you send them?
I sent those to you,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
I think I sent them twice.
Awesome.
Once on Tuesday and once today.
With updates.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I did the year-to-date budget too, because Mike wanted to look at that. But anyway, this comparison, we can pour over these numbers and bore you to death with it. The same thing in IT, there's some POs there that have to be moved because we're not going to be charging those costs for open purchase orders from last year. If they're fulfilled, we'll have to charge them elsewhere, and system IT has been allocated to water and sewer. So those costs won't show up in the general fund, so that's why they're 0 this year. So anyway, column for 2018 actual, fourth column shows you the zeros versus last year's actual costs, and this is where you get your savings. And if you roll down to the bottom line.
Is that on the last page, Richard?
Yep. All the way down. The net difference is $259,326 in actual 18 costs versus 17. It's less.
To date.
By $259,326 to date.
To date.
Now, also what you have to take out of that number, and I did put this in that email, is that $27,850 in the engineering costs, in the engineering costs, the $38,403 in the IT costs, and you have to also take out $46,000 in finance costs because we had an unanticipated retirement unrelated to the cost savings, unbudgeted, as well as $11,000 in cost to move the office, which we're going to get reimbursed for, supposedly, from the Financial Restructuring Board.
So then turning that number into the savings.
That number turns into
230.
$368,543. When you do those adjustments for those POs that don't count in these cost centers anymore, and also the 42,963 in the finance cost.
And that's to date? That's not the entire year expected?
This is just to date. This is just to date. And it's also comparing to date last year for 2017 actual. That's not the whole year. So we can keep running this analysis week after week, month end after month end, and be able to track the differences for this year versus last year to see where we are.
Do you expect it to be consistent month to month at the same rate?
Yes, up until October, when actually the costs started to get cut for the people whose departments were eliminated. And then it's not
So
gonna-
essentially, we'd be
We'll reach
looking
the
at a
1 year
savings
mark.
from now to October.
Pardon me?
Essentially, when we compare this year to last year,
Yeah.
we're basically looking at June, July, August, September, and October.
Right, and another anomaly that's gonna be in there is
Maybe
the-
part of November.
the payouts for the personnel who are leaving.
Right.
Because they're not a normal expense. They're, a one-timer. Those are in your numbers right there, though, we pull down.
Yeah.
So, that pretty much shows what's actually happening now, and I'll keep comparing it and keep sending it to everybody once we do each month end. It's best to do it at month end, because obviously that's when the numbers are consistent. May versus May, has to be the full May.
So realistically, we're looking at, when you compare 17 to 18, we're looking at another 5 months worth of savings.
Yep. Yep.
Now, the other analysis you referred to is, if you look at the 6 positions that were primarily consolidated, those positions would save the city in salary and annual benefits, $628. Some office expenses that were saved, we add that, and then we have to, there's an additional expense that we actually incurred by moving to a senior planner, so hiring a senior planner and the benefit of that, even though we haven't done it yet. If you subtract that off from the savings, and then we will do a little bit more consulting engineering. If you factor that in, to subtract off from the savings, the annualized salary savings from those 6 positions comes to $523,000. And then we have a savings in current year present value of reduced future retirement costs of $1,018,000, which doesn't tend to be factored into the cash flow analysis, but it's still a side.
Does that 523 factor in health insurance in benefits?
Yes.
But
And we
not,
looked at
not,
whether-
not long-term, not the buyouts or anything like it, just,
No, but we assume the buyouts are gonna occur at some point for these individuals anyway, but one of the savings is you don't incur future buyouts, because you're not putting a future employee or a whole series of employees in that position in the future, and you don't incur future OPEBs, other post-employment benefits. So that OPEB thing, that reduced liability, that's what we do the GASB 45 analysis with every year, and that tells us how much we essentially owe to the system that we haven't properly funded yet. That number's in undiscounted terms, wasn't like 276 million, and discounted present value 150 million or something, 135 million.
Yeah.
Through these consolidations, we're lowering the 135 million to essentially 134 million or so, and that doesn't sound like much, but it's $1 million of true long-term savings, so. But it's not seen in the cash flow analysis here.
Plus your numbers that you put together included the additional cost for the assessor.
Yeah, we certainly,
services from the county.
that's right,
So
net,
that was
net
netted
gain,
out of there
yeah.
too.
So we tried to have it be as accurate as possible.
reflection.
Yeah.
And the mayor was using 25% for the overhead on top of the salaries, and then the actual cost for the healthcare plans that the individuals were in. So that's the picture of here's what we should save, and this is the picture of here's what we are saving.
And they're
Period
pretty
by period.
congruent.
Yep. I think they should track pretty well. It'll probably slow down in the middle of the year a little bit, because that's when the costs start to gear up, and they'll have geared up, pretty equally. But towards the end of the year, you're not gonna see the savings, because that's when we did the cuts, October, November, December.
So we're gonna see savings of about 700,000 roughly.
It looks like it, yes. Yeah.
Seems to me when we were doing this exercise, that was about what we were estimating at the time too, $600,000 or $700,000 of savings in this exercise.
Now, if you jump to the other tab up there, I think one of these is the healthcare year-to-date. Not that one, I think the next one. Or maybe I'm wrong. Could be the last one.
Well, this talked about benefits, is that
That's the benefit changes so far. If you blow that up a little bit, that's where we are year-to-date on all benefits related to the cost cutting that took place, which includes Social Security, workers' comp, unemployment, disability, and health insurance. But of course, these are the total numbers for those categories and not just specific to the positions that were eliminated. But as you can see, last year to date, 2,287,000, this year to date, 1,733,000. However, this is, you know, May through Tuesday, and that's May through the end of the year last year. So there's gonna be some more costs coming in this year, but it's still 5 million ahead. Oh, excuse me, 500,000 ahead. Less spending this year than last. And if you look at the last picture, the last tab at the top. Nope, I'm sorry. The one that says, it's another cost cutting or cost savings for, I think, the healthcare. But not one.
Another page?
No, it's one of those 3 tabs, I believe. Oh, no, you know what? I didn't put that one in there, but I do have it with me, but you can't show it, right?
Oh,
Because you'll cut off the video. I'll have to send that to you. It shows what you've been asking for to track the healthcare, all funds. In fact, I'll give it to you so that you have it, answers your question. It just shows for all funds what the healthcare savings are this year versus last year.
Hey Beth, is Brian, does he know about, yeah.
I have it here somewhere. So that was, the next tab, Mike, I think the year-to-date is all of the funds, I think the first one. Yes. Now this is all of the funds and the reports that we're used to seeing. If you blow that up a little bit, here you go. Here's your health insurance. What's that show us there? Column 4 versus column 1.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3.
Just the
4.
bottom line of all of them. That's just health insurance now.
2 million, 2.1 million, 2.7, so about $600,000.
600,000 less than last year. Once again, it's May through.
627,000.
Yeah, May through today versus May through the end of the month last year. But we are tracking better on healthcare. The healthcare costs have, and the experience has been down, plus we also have the cuts from people that are no longer using it. So these reports are comparing all funds, all expenses, all revenues, this year to date versus last year, full May. I can send these out to everybody. It's a bunch of pages. It's the general fund. If you roll down to the last page of the general fund, you can take a quick look at what the difference is this year versus last year. Should be like page 19. Oh, that's way too far.
Way too far.
You're down into the sewer fund there.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's right.
Page 5.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different funds there. I did a report for each one of them.
14,
There you go.
15,
Yeah,
16.
there you go. That's good.
Oh, okay.
16. So the projection, now the actual is, and what you want to compare here, if you blow it up just a little bit, Mike,
Sure.
the revenue is distorted because it books all of the property taxes in, and you can see it's pretty consistent. 13,394,000 last year, 13,773,000 this year, because all the property taxes are considered revenue at this point, even though they all haven't been collected. So what you really want to look at, total expense of 8,985,000 last year in the general fund versus 7,975,000 this year. Now, once again, first column's all of May last year. This column is May through the payables this week.
That's about $1 million.
It's about $1 million though, and I don't think we're gonna spend $1 million in the rest of
It's
the
2
month
weeks.
of May in 2 weeks, so we're pretty far ahead, we're doing pretty well. So each one of the funds, you can look at every expense, and I can send this out to everybody, all the department heads, I think I'll send it. But it's better to do it when it's a month-end issue, like we did with April's. You can see the comparisons. But the news is good in the general fund. If you roll down a couple pages, you'll see what's going on with the rec complex fund at the bottom line. That's the revenue. That's the expenses. Okay,
Oh, I went.
no, you're good, you're good. Now, last year at this time, we were 37,960 ahead. Unfortunately, this year we're 47,130 behind. Now, a lot of that's to do with recognition of the timing of the revenues. We don't have all the marina revenue in yet, and I think last May we did. And of course, this is last May full month, this is last May, or this May just to today.
Richard,
So-
you raised a point. I mean, we're looking at our expenses, but there's another piece to this budgetary puzzle, and that's revenue.
Yep.
Where are we, I guess, in
Well-
comparison May to May?
Well, you see 513 was the revenue last May, full month to date, full year to date, and the revenue is only 284, 852 this year.
Right.
But when we were just looking at the general fund, the revenues were relatively similar.
Well, that's the general fund, yeah, is recognizing all of the property tax revenue, and they were very similar, but this is the rec complex fund, you can see how different the revenue is, because this is more of an actual revenue collection basis going on. And like I said, the marina revenue was in pretty strong last year through the month of May, and we don't have it all in this year to May, because it's only through today, and we're still collecting that. But if you look at,
But do you think
Look at
that
the
within the
expenses.
next 2 weeks, the revenue will be enough to
I don't think it's
to
gonna be-
balance out
I don't
the,
think it's gonna be up to $500,000 in 2
Right.
weeks, no. But look at the expenses too, last year was 475, the good news is this year it's only 332 so far, and we're not gonna spend 140,000, 150,000 more by the end of the month there, no, so the expenses are running better.
Mhm.
Why is revenue down then?
We have, it's timing, some of it. If you roll up to the revenue section, go back up to the top, couple pages up, right there, okay. 250,000 is the recreation revenue as of last year, the end of May, and 172 is where we are right now. And you can see caption by caption what's ahead and what's behind. Marina,
Looks like easy on a lock is
Yeah.
the biggest category.
easy unallocated, what that was waiting for the credit card transactions to all settle and all be recognized as different types of revenue. Most of that was marina last year at this time. And you see where it is right now this year? Only
Oh, I'm
28,
sorry.
only 28,000, easy unallocated.
Is this something we should be concerned about?
Well, like I said, the marina revenue is,
Is it what, around 100,000, 110,000,
Yeah.
isn't it, something
I
like
think
that?
we're just behind on collecting it, it's the timing so far.
But it looks
everybody-
like we're making more in the marina, so far this year we have,
and it looks like our revenue for membership is up too for the,
and the crate seems to be making more.
Yeah, a lot of categories are improving, it's just that one we're
Yeah.
taking a hit on, huh?
Yep.
What's the easy unallocated again?
The easy unallocated means easy facility, which is their software that they use in recreation. And that software doesn't integrate with our credit card merchant. So they make it very difficult for us to clear our transactions because they want us to use a different credit card merchant, so they make money off of it and we don't have the same savings that we do using ours. So they make it very difficult for us to recognize our revenue properly. We have to just go through the month, analyze the transactions, make sure they've all cleared through our credit card merchant, and then go back through the easy facility revenue postings and then determine what they should be and allocate them with a journal entry. It's a pain in the neck, but it does work out, and that's why you see there's so much there last year, 156, 192 versus 28,836 or whatever it is this year. But once again, the timing of it is the big difference. That's the whole month of May last year, and this is just May through today. And the marina revenue has been collected slower this year than last year. And it wasn't deliberate, it's just the way it's coming in. They got the invoices and the dunnings to the people to pay their marina revenue, they got it out slower this year than last year. So they don't anticipate losing any, it's just gonna come in slower.
Okay.
Yeah. But like the mayor said, other than the easy unallocated, it looks like a lot of our revenue streams as far as the recreation complex are actually up.
Not too bad.
If you guys don't mind, we'll move ahead. We got about 2 minutes before the regular council meeting.
Is that enough? Is that enough pouring over the numbers for you? When you go down to the next ones, it's parking, water, sewer, library, debt service. You'll see them all like that. You can look at them line by line. Any questions on any lines, just let me know.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
So, let's move on to agenda item 3. There are no items brought forward for departments to be approved by this committee. And I think the new business we've already talked about, our 5-year plan, old business. Anybody have any old business to bring forward? Okay, I take a motion to adjourn from.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we need a roll call?
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the good questions and comments.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Richard.
We've got 1 more minute for the beginning of the meeting. Great timing.
We can talk about more numbers if you want. Before you to death.
Well, I will say that I will pass on the 5-year plan in its current state and my slideshow to all of you so that we can finish it up hopefully next week and vote on our 5-year plan.
You gonna take that show on the road, Mike?
Pardon?
Take that show on the road?
I could.
Take it to the university, huh?
I figure if we can balance our budget, we could probably balance anyone, so. Takes a lot of hard work.
Did you get the text from Dale? Or not a text, but the email from
Yeah.
Dale?
But the first,
His wife was having problems and they didn't know.
But
She is.
Yeah, yeah, I got the note.
it's exciting.
I don't know about Rochelle though.
She
Lucky boy.
isn't feeling well.
Oh, okay.
Well, I guess it's time to begin our regular session. So
Second, Mayor. Oh, thank you. Hold on. Thank you.
recording okay now? Call the meeting of our Common Council this evening to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Armstrong? Counselor Kelly?
Here?
Counselor Dowdle? Counselor Ensel?
Here.
Counselor McFarland?
Here.
Counselor Kretzer?
Here.
Thank you very much. I think we've got a proclamation that we're going to present in just a moment. Do I have it already here?
It's under that.
There we go. Many of you may have heard that this is a National Nursing Home Week. The privilege of going and visiting with the residents of Meadowbrook this week, and it's very pleasurable for me, and I'd like to read a proclamation. Whereas our beloved citizens of Plattsburgh, New York, now residing in nursing homes, skilled nursing care, and post-acute care centers have contributed immeasurably to the heritage, success, and growth of our community. And whereas nursing home residents of any age or ability are themselves living history and a precious resource. And whereas as a member of the American Healthcare Association, Plattsburgh Rehabilitation and Nursing Center is holding events in observance of Nursing Home Week, guided by this year's national theme of the Spirit of America. And whereas Nursing Home Week begins on Mother's Day, May 13th, and ends on May 19th, 2018. Therefore, I call and read as mayor of the city of Plattsburgh, urge everyone in the community to visit their loved one, friend or neighbor currently residing in a skilled nursing care center to show respect for all that they have given to society and to us. Let no elderly or disabled person sit alone during this time to wonder if they are valued, appreciated, and loved. Let all residents of skilled nursing facilities know that they too are a vital piece of the spirit of America. Visiting or volunteering your time at a local care facility is a testament to community spirit, brings honor to our fathers, mothers, grandparents, and everyone in residence, and lifts the spirits of caregivers who value your involvement. In witness thereof, I hereto have fixed my hand and caused the official seal of the city of Plattsburgh to be affixed. So it was a great pleasure to visit with them. Just as we see that our city is in some sense a victim of demographics, we know that a lot of people are retiring, and unfortunately at times retiring away, and we have to attract the millennials to replace them. And by the way, I've got a couple of interesting articles I'd like to share with you as well, but they're seeing that same demographic. There's simply not enough facilities, not only in the city of Plattsburgh and Clinton County, but in the entire nation to take care of our loved ones. And they tend to not reside at home as often as we would have in our generation. We probably all recall grandparents or great-grandparents that used to live with us at home, and it's kind of rare these days. At the same time, the changing demographics means it's harder and harder for us to attract skilled workers to work in these facilities. And Meadowbrook's an amazing example, one of the best examples of doing it right. I asked the director there if his unit was an anomaly, and he said this is actually one of the superior units within 100, 200 miles, all the way down the Albany region. There's very few high-quality units like this, and they're still in very, very short supply. I sat with a gentleman in his 80s for lunch, and he said to me he's got a house just within eyeshot of the facility he's staying at right now, and he told me he's going to have to sell his house. He just can't keep up with the rising costs, especially taxes, and I think you all are very cognizant of that. When I'm wondering about how we're going to manage the city, when I'm lamenting all the really hard work we did last year to try to keep these taxes contained, when I'm lamenting the displacement it caused on 6 individuals last year. Fortunately, we didn't have to lay off any of our union employees, but we lost 6 valued employees from the city, but 2% of our labor force, but ultimately we saved on 10% of our general fund. I mean, this is incredibly hard and difficult work, but I think of the people who are retired and trying to stay in their homes, and that's really what motivates me. It's easy for us to afford those taxes, but it's incredibly hard for him. Imagine him contemplating selling a home he's lived in for generations, raised his kids in, and now contemplating perhaps moving away somewhere that's more affordable. I think that's where it really gives value to the work we're doing. A couple of things, a very brief mention. We had a Burnham and Associates do an employees day for us. Was it yesterday? The day yesterday. They brought, for the first time in a number of years, a number of healthcare systems up, our various drug packages, our various healthcare packages. Blue Cross or Blue Shield from Albany came up as well. We had 4 or 5 different booths for people to come in. So many of our employees appreciated that, and I'm very grateful for the really good work our current benefits consultant and Richard's office is doing in really helping us not only provide a better product, but also in containing costs. As you saw, we're doing very well on health care this year compared to what Clinton County, for instance, is facing. I believe Clinton County is looking at something like 10% increases, and I think the level of expertise Richard and Burnham and Associates is offering is really making a big difference. And I'll close by saying I had lunch with somebody, and he said that somebody came up to him and said, you know, the problem with the mayor, he treats running City Hall as if it's a business. And the person I was talking to said, well, of course, it is a business. And it got me thinking all afternoon. The administration of City Hall, the working with our employee groups in our various departments, that is a business. You all operate DPW as a business. Finance is operated as a business. You recognize there's a revenue source, albeit from the taxpayers, but you have to provide a service that people think is valuable, and you have to be responsive to essentially our customers. We call them a little bit different. We call them taxpayers, but it is run like a business. So the one hat I actually wear most of the week is trying to run a business, and I've got some great department heads that help me do it. The other hat I wear is in the council, and that's a democracy. That's not a business at all. It's a very different animal. It responds to very different forces. And sometimes we get confused. Is the council a business? No, it's a democracy. But at the same time, City Hall and all the departments isn't democracy, it's a business. And we have to remember that and recognize that we have to create value every day and work with our various departments in the most business-like manner we actually could. And I see tremendous gains in doing that. Some of the budget work is as responsible or as sophisticated that I've seen in businesses that are actually even larger than the city of Plattsburgh, believe it or not. So I think we all understand that, but it didn't really become clear to me the difference between the democratic part of what we do in the council and the business part of what we do within the 270 some odd employees within the city of Plattsburgh. I just can't say enough about the amazing job you all are doing in that 5-year plan. That's exactly what business planning needs to do. We need that guidance in the business end of the city to have that kind of insight, that kind of goal setting, and then it's up to us as on the business side to realize those goals and make those savings. And the department, as I said, the department had a meeting just a couple of days or a couple of weeks ago. They're doing incredible work. Some of the temporary savings we're seeing is because of their diligence in delaying purchases and really sophisticated procurement. Rich is starting off in a number of different processes this year as he gets more help in his office that I think is going to really show dividends. And we're really upping the business side of City Hall, and I'm really impressed, and I'm really grateful that you all as a council have engaged that so thoroughly through your 5-year plan. Thank you very much. It's really very helpful.
You're welcome.
That's all the comments I have today. Thank you.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on May 10th, 2018 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councillor Quester, second by Councillor Kelly. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending May 9th, 2018 in the amount of $127,702.52 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councillor Kelly, second by Councillor Ensel. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is a time when we ask for any reports that you may offer. You see in your packet some reports offered by our various offices. Could I begin then with the governance strategy and city operations? Councillor Quester, any updates?
Thank you, Mayor. There are a ton of updates from last week, other than we have a scheduled time. Councilor Armstrong and I will be meeting with some community stakeholders who have experience in ethics boards, countywide and through other organizations. We'll be meeting with them at the beginning of the week to get the process going in setting up something formal for the city. And that's pretty much the only update I have so far.
Thank you. City infrastructure, Councillor Ensel?
Nothing to report from the past week. We did meet last week and have a copy of the minutes. Certainly the highlight of our meeting last week was Andrew Dern's presentation on Wilcox Dock Marina potential.
Thank you. Finance and budget, Councillor Kelly.
Well, we had our monthly finance and budget committee meeting this afternoon, and everyone in this room participated, so there's nothing new to add.
Public safety, Councillor Dowdle is not here.
We did actually, if I may, Councillor Dowdle and I met this afternoon with Chief Ritter and also Joe McMahon to discuss some of the issues that were brought forth in the last public safety meeting. And Dean, I believe Councillor Dowdle is going to be reaching out to you to get your advice on some language.
Okay, that's good. Public library, Councillor Armstrong is excused. MLD, Councillor McFarland.
Yes, we did have our meeting the week before last, and at the last meeting it was approved, the agenda items were to approve PMLD bid for pole top three-phase switches and to replace some substation batteries. At our meeting the week before, we did have 3 college students come and attend, speak with Mr. Tracy for a long time, and ask a lot of questions. So that was actually rather nice, a different change up for our MLD board, which is usually gets an attendance of about 0 people from the public. So that was nice, and I do believe there is a cryptocurrency forum coming up. When's the date for that?
I think the first week in June.
And so that will be exciting as well.
ANCA is sponsoring that as well and be up on the campus. I understand Keith Tile is helping to facilitate it. Resolved, the reports are as listed are hereby ordered, received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public record of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councillor Hensel and seconded by Councillor McFarland. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. No correspondences at this time. Please proceed.
Resolved that the bills ordered by the Common Council for the week ending May 18th, 2018 in the amount of $983,817.68 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councillor Kelly and seconded by Councillor McFarland. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. It doesn't appear there's any persons from the public that would like to speak tonight, unless one of our reporters here from the public, would you like to come and address the council?
You were saying in 2002 with the numbers of the.
Yeah.
I think that's when George Miller retired. He never took a sick day, literally, in like 40 years.
I'll get the details, yeah.
It'd be interesting.
solved.
I was just thinking about that.
You could be our council historian,
Oh,
Joe.
I know.
Please continue.
Motion to remove item 7A from the table.
Seeing no motion, I understand Councillor Armstrong continues to work on that, so we'll continue.
Motion to remove item 7B from the table.
I'll make that motion.
Do you have a
Moved
number?
by Councillor
Do we
McFarland,
have a number?
No, I wasn't able to get it on this
Okay,
week, so.
so you may want to just leave the table. If
If you don't have the.
table
Just
for
won't
one
be
more
seconded.
week.
See, there's a number in there.
Yeah, he just didn't have the.
Just won't be seconded.
Is that okay? Continue leaving on the table?
It just stays on the table, yeah,
Okay.
until the council goes.
So say it didn't receive a second, leave it on the table and continue? Oh, is that it? No travel requests at this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration? Any new business or council reports?
I will mention, and I failed to do it last week, but I met about 10 days or so ago with Ken Kennelly from Plattsburgh State regarding essentially what has been dubbed in the past town gown relationships, but I like to call it city gown relationships. And one of the things that he's proposing, or that we discussed, is possibly having an initial meeting with the mayor, Councillor Kretzer, Councillor Dowdle, whose wards kind of encompass the campus area, along with President Etling and some other administrators at the college, to just kind of do some initial discussion and exploration, see what could be done. And then maybe if it's the wish to possibly form another committee like there had been done in the past, but I understand that there might have been some concerns with that structure. So I think we've agreed to meet again. He and I are going to meet again or communicate again very soon and extend the offer to just to have at least an initial meeting to go over some things.
I know this is really important to President Etling, and he shared with me 2 large binders of recommendations. If you ever like to look at them, I've got them in my office. I think there's an awful lot of things that we can really start making some headway on. Something I'd like to have you consider. We are continuing to move on the parking and codes enforcement officer. As a matter of fact, do we announce a local public hearing for?
Yeah, I didn't print it. First we didn't introduce it. Let's do it next week.
Wouldn't we then have to delay it all one more week though? And this is a somewhat pressing. Would you be able to get the language for us?
Do you want to print it?
Keep talking.
Yeah, I'll keep talking for a little while. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Copies for everyone. Just need copies for every council member.
What are we talking about right now?
A couple of weeks ago, you all seemed to have a consensus that we should reinvigorate our parking enforcement and include other minor city ordinance enforcement as well. We can introduce a hearing to that effect and have that local law adjustment so we could then go and hire the person. We've received an indication from Civil Service that they can modify the description accordingly. But associated with that, I'd also like to see us over time beef up our annual inspections of multifamily housing units, especially the ones that cater to students. Mm-hmm. This is a program that Burlington has, that every year they'll do a re-inspection. Every time there's a change in the lease,
Mm-hmm.
they'll do a re-inspection.
Several cities have that. I know of one city down in the Albany area that has that, and they actually charge the landlords $25 each time, and they need to be certified and inspected before occupancy can take place.
And when you can receive as much as $3,000 a semester from one student alone, a small minor re-inspection fee to make sure it's kept safe, I think is a good investment for the city and the landlords themselves. And if it could avoid one Brinkerhoff fire by having us go in there every once in a while and make sure everything's up to code, I think that'd be a really good investment, which would pay for itself. Those revenues are designed to pay for the inspections themselves. So I will try to look and generate some numbers for you all and bring that forward as well as a way to, and it's one of the values, one of the recommendations in that report is more ongoing inspections to raise the standards and the bar for some of these off-campus housing.
But that's all multi-unit housing, not just campus housing, right?
I think the principle is all multi-unit, but in anything with public policy, with limited resources, we have to triage and determine where the most important inspections ought to be. You know, for instance, use an example of parking enforcement. It's going to make sense to have that parking enforcement officer spend more time in the area where there's an awful lot more parking than to try to give equal time to all the various outlying areas. So I imagine that the building inspector's office would come up with some sort of a regime to do that. Maybe it means that some of the housing that recycles more quickly, like in the student area, be inspected more frequently, and others, like in west side of Ward 3, that is much more longer term, you wouldn't need to inspect as often. So it would be kind of triage based on where
Would
the
that be,
turnover
would
is.
that conceivably work on the honor system, that the landlord would have to contact the city for certificate of occupancy? And how, I guess, I'm just kind of wondering how it gets reported that there's a change in occupancy.
You know, I was thinking, first of all, my first question was, how do we know where all the multifamily is if we haven't really done that inventory for a long time? And it occurred to me that, well, maybe MLD and finance might know because they have the water and electricity hookups every year. So maybe every time there's a tenant change in a water and electricity hookup, that should send an indicator to us that maybe this is time for a reinspection. So there must be ways that other places do it. We don't have an inventory, so we're kind of starting from scratch. And it might take a little bit of work to build up that inventory, but once we get it running and functioning, it'll probably be a lot easier to administer. But I think you're right, it's going to take a little bit of detective work to get it going in the very first place.
Now, are these two things related? You're not going to have the same parking enforcement guy doing the inspection?
No, the art of, and you'll see this in the local law that Dean is producing, the art of this is that our parking enforcement officer will be permitted to also do minor city code ordinance things, litter, doggy poop, stuff like that, that doesn't require training, state certification for building inspectors, all that kind of stuff. But we can anticipate that a lot of the quality of life stuff, like litter, overflowing garbage bins, illegal parking, you know, a fridge in the front yard, something like that, could be dealt with just through ordinances and low-level parking and code enforcement officer.
And this would be a local law or an ordinance?
It requires us to further describe some and flesh out some of our existing ordinances. So it's not really adding ordinances itself, it's modifying our existing ordinances to allow a code enforcement officer under the building inspector's office a little more leeway in what they can do.
Okay, but they'll just be enforcing our current ordinances that are
Correct.
not currently enforced.
So that's what you'll see in the proposed local law. Under the general municipal law, in order for a non-peace officer to enforce a code, there has to be specific delegation of authority to enforce a specific local law. So what we've gone is gone through each quality of life type code section and just clarified that parking enforcement officer is also authorized to enforce that section. So it's not a drastic change, it's just authorizing that specific person to do that specific enforcement.
And we did research and found that this is done elsewhere in New York State, Westchester County, Peekskill, that area has the same sort of framework. So we didn't have to reinvent the wheel.
I just happened to think when you mentioned about checking with the MLD records, there would be nothing to prevent a landlord from increasing the rents to be electrical included.
Yep.
And then there wouldn't be any changeover.
Yep.
Yeah, some may already do that. May include the electricity and utilities.
So
This
someone would
also-
need
they'd have
to
to be
formally
wise to it
introduce
unless
this
we start
and.
doing
Yeah, but I mean,
May 31st is 2 weeks.
Yeah, most already include water and sewer in their
Right.
rents. They don't have separate water and sewer accounts for transient tenants like college students.
And I think the public actually is going to help us with that registry. As a matter of fact, one that a taxpayer came into my office this week saying, hey, I know that this next door has been converted to student housing. Did you know it's been converted? That attic, when my neighbor used to live there, was no way was it high enough for student housing, but I know there's a couple of students living up there. That kind of thing. Anecdotally, maybe there might be some reporting from citizens themselves who want to make sure that we keep their neighborhoods up to snuff. So may I then introduce local law P4 for year 2018 and call a hearing for this date 2 weeks hence, or this date 2 weeks hence?
May 31st.
May
At
31st.
a specific time, 5:01.
At 5:01 p.m. Be a local law amending chapters 253, section 2 and 12, chapters 233, section 37, subsection B, chapter 200, section 4, chapters 171, section 7, and chapter 183, section 9.3 of the city code of the city of Plattsburgh, and a copy has been given to you for your consideration. Anything else for this evening?
I would note that there's going to be a workshop tomorrow, a special meeting of the council scheduled for 11:30. I'll probably be a little late myself, but I plan to be there around noon, which is open to the public.
Thank you. Any other items? Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight? Moved by Councilor Rensselaer, second by Councilor McFarland. Discussion? Roll call.
Council Kelly,
Yes.
Council Renzel,
Yes.
Council McFarland,
Yes.
Council President.
Yes.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, public.
Sorry, I was late, Mike. I had a final exam.
Oh, well, you can't miss those. You can't miss those.
Well, it started at 2:30.
Wow.
Who's just
2 hours, wow.
What are you, growing the playoff beard, Jeff?
Here, I'll sign this for Dave.
Growing the playoff beard?
How about your pen for a second?
So you're gonna buy 170 Market Street?
170 Margaret Street. What's that? This is publishing for sale?
Started walking around with shots in the diaphragm.
No.
Yes.
You're checking it out.
Why is it for sale?
There's something you need to tell us, Joe?
Yeah. You'd know before we would.
Good, you.
Good. So you did a presentation today about the numbers that you have so far this year. Given the information
No,
that you
but
have
with the
right now,
finance
are you
department,
really
any members
optimistic
from administration
that
is building, welcome to come at 10 o'clock.
financially